It says I'm live. You got it? I think it works. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Civics for the Soul. I like this song. Wait. So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always good to see you all. It's really a great day here in Atlanta. So, as you all know, every week with Civics for the Soul, we talk about civics and community and history. Sometimes we have some guests over, sometimes we don't, but we have a good time nevertheless, because this is what I love to do. So thank you for joining me. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. I kind of love it. Okay, so let's get to it. I won't delay. This past week, I had the luxury of listening to and sometimes watching these Senate hearings for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Now, you all know that Joe Biden nominated Ketanji Brown Jackson to the United States Supreme Court. So he does that under Article 2, Section 2. Let's just get that out of the way. Article 2, Section 2, that says that the Senate has the exclusive right to provide advice and consent to the president on treaties and nominations. So anytime there's a treaty or the president nominates anybody to any position, the Senate has to be involved. So that being said, it was difficult to watch, y'all. It really was. Because I felt like she was on trial. I felt like I and so many of my other friends, Black women lawyers that I know, we were all on trial in that moment. So while she's giving this testimony, and this is like 2 days and 20 hours of testimony that she's giving about her record, I feel like I'm living it too. I felt everything, all the ups, the downs, and she maintained all of her composure. And it's sad that she has to be composed when being attacked. That's even the standard that we have now for the Senate, but or these particular experiences. But she's very composed. But it just reminded me about this profession that lawyers are a part of. And in this profession, you are constantly challenged and you are questioned, and people attack you. And so I've had experiences where I've done brilliant work, phenomenal work. And at the end of the day, everybody looked at me and they were like, it's all right. And after a while of that, you start believing it on some level. Even though you sort of try to keep yourself uplifted, you still believe it. So from the time that, in my experience, whether you're in law school and they tell you, my white counterparts at Emory Law told me that I was probably only there because of affirmative action. They told me that to my face. At least they said it to my face. From those moments to the moments where I've been the only person of color in a room full of older white men and they're trying to school me on how to do a deposition, to even being in spaces where I've been the only person of color on a call where we're talking about Ahmaud Arbery and Juneteenth and everything else. And, it just becomes difficult because they're questioning you. They're questioning whether it's okay for you to feel the way that you do. So I felt all of this in a very real, tangible way. And so it all goes to whether you have value, whether you're supposed to be there, whether you belong in this larger system that tells you that you don't belong. Now, if y'all remember in episode 4, I think I talked about Black women in the courts. And if you didn't see it, go ahead and take a quick look at it. In order for Ketanji Brown Jackson to be where she is right now, she is what we call a very special, rare kind of unicorn. I mean, you just can't get there. Hey, T. Christy, thank you so much for joining us. And then we got some other folks there, so thank y'all for joining in. In order for her to be where she is the most special, rare person that I have seen. I mean, she's like one of the best to ever do it. For her to get to where she is, first she would have had to overcome all these hurdles about that's hurdles plus obstacles, hurdles. She would have had to overcome all these hurdles from high school. Now, my understanding is that Judge Jackson had a high school counselor. When she told them that she aspired to go to Harvard, they told her, well, don't aim so high. Really? You're a counselor? This is how you counsel children? Anyway, so she had to overcome that. They said she was a star, even in high school. She overcame that. Then she went to Harvard. I think she was magna cum laude there. And remember, only 36% of Black women even graduate from a college. Okay, then she goes on to Harvard Law, and she's one of the editors on Law Review. And also remember, only 7.5% of students who actually attend law school are Black people. So then she does all that. She does phenomenal work there. Everyone knows her as someone who is a brilliant mind. She comes out, she clerks with Justice Breyer. She has other positions that she does that work in. Then she gets an appointment by the Obama administration. President Obama appoints her. Do you know how rare that is? That's rare. It just doesn't happen. To be a judge, one, it's extremely difficult to get an appointment. Then you're appointed to the federal bench. And we just said that of all the federal judges that have ever existed, only 1.8% of the people who have been on the federal bench have been Black women. 1.8. So she's got to do all of this, all of these amazing things. She has a family. She's got daughters. She's got a husband coming to the house. She's trying to crochet. She's trying to interact with her friends, keep herself sane. So here she is. She's this nominee to the United States Supreme Court. In all of her accomplished glory, she actually has the most trial experience of all the judges, but she's got more trial experience than I think 4 of them combined. These people that nobody had any problem putting on the bench. She's got more trial experience than everybody. A record of being very thorough in her decision making. So whatever you think about her judicial philosophy, very thorough. Her opinions are very detailed. And then she has to spend 20 hours over the course of 2 days having to answer to some of the most mediocre and less qualified men that I've ever seen. Men who believe that their role and their responsibility, and they were downright giddy in doing it, their role and their responsibility is to disrespect her, ask her silly questions, and to be just generally aggressive. And you have to sit there, and I and so many others, we've had that moment where you just got to sit there and you just got to take it. You got to take it. I felt that. I felt all of that. All the moments where she has to go, reach over, get a bottle of water, sit there, try to, do something with her hands. You just got to take that. The gravity of all of that. Think about it. She's navigating an entire system that is hostile to her, and she is feeling it real time. She is a serious person, and she's thinking to herself, I've got so many things to do. I've got people dependent on me. I got a family. I got a community is looking up to me. I've made all these choices, these sacrifices, put in this work. And I've got to sit here across from people who are hostile to me and deliberately trying to derail me. And you just got to take it, and take it with a smile and be calm. Because if you don't, all anybody's going to talk about the next day is how you lost your cool. That's what they did to Serena, remember? That's all anybody talks about you. They don't talk about the disrespect. They just talk about how you lost your cool in the middle of that level of hostility. Which brings me to Rafael Eduardo. Ted, let me get to Mexico while Texas is in a crisis. Cruz. Ted Cruz. This is why I said I wasn't going to talk about this, but I had to once I saw his tomfoolery. if you all didn't know, Ted Cruz also went to Harvard Law. He too was an editor on the Law Review. And so he knows her. They're classmates. He also knows how brilliant she is. And yet, and still, he still tried it. You know, Ted Cruz shows up with all these poster boards. I was like, are you kidding me? He got all these poster boards. Showed up to do what I call was his part in the collective attack on Judge Jackson. And it was a coordinated effort for them to do this. So Josh Hawley, who's from Missouri, he tried to paint her as sympathetic to a pornographer. I don't even know. Anyway, look, I just took a pause. I'm like, took a breath. So he did his part. So here comes Ted Cruz. And Ted Cruz's job is to try to suggest that she is some person who uses critical race theory in her rulings and her opinions and whatever she's doing. So he's questioning her about being, I think she's on the board of like a Georgetown day school or something like that. So Georgetown day school, she's on the board. And we all know the board does not make decisions about what the kids are taught. It has nothing to do with that. So he goes up there with his 4 or 5 poster boards. He gets them all set up and everything. And he pulls out a book, Anti-Racist Baby, which I think was done by Ibram Kendi. You know, so he pulls it out. And I'm thinking to myself, this is just random as hell. Like, I don't even know where you're going with this. And so he pulls out this book and he says, do you agree that babies are racist? And I'm thinking, this month. So in response, Judge Jackson goes, Senator, yes, it was the most ignorant display. She does this pause. The pause that I've done several times, even just talking about this. She does a pause. Now, Ellie Mistal has done this article in The Nation, and I really encourage all of y'all to go read it. It's in The Nation. It's called Ketanji Brown Jackson's Long Pause Explained Racism and Sexism in America. There is a wonderful scholar out of Spelman who coined this term. Moya Bailey coined the term misogynoir. That's what this is. That's this intersection of racism and sexism and the particular disdain for Black women. Oh, it's cool, sweetie. That's just a dog. So he does this. He writes this article, and I think he hits the nail on the head. So I'm gonna briefly. I just got to share this with you. She said, "Senator," and then she sighed, and then she paused. For a long time, as the silence filled the room, I felt like I could see Jackson make the same calculation nearly every Black person and ancestor has made at some point while living in the New World. It's the calculation that she's thinking. The calculation enslaved people made before trying to escape to freedom, or activists made before sitting down at the white lunch counter. But it's also the calculation of a woman makes before responding to the email of the Felson who was just promoted ahead of her. I've been there with the email. The one that told me, why are you so, she didn't say, why am I so angry? She said something silly. Anyway, I digress. Who was just promoted ahead of her, or the calculation I make when a white executive comments on my Twitter feed, but not my published columns. It's the calculation when Black people try to decide, am I gonna risk it all for this? He hits the nail on the head on that, because that's what the question is in that moment. Am I going to risk it all for this? And risk is a whole other question. We can have a whole other conversation about whether this is really a risk, because, or what she's risking. You know, she's not risking people not thinking that she's intelligent. You know, she's not risking that. She's not going to risk her power and influence in the larger community. You know, if you're a child of God and if God before you, then, you know, no one can interfere with that. But she may, in fact, be risking her standing in this white supremacist structure and this social order and the caste. She might be risking her position for that, but that's a whole other discussion. We'll have that another time. But am I going to risk it all for this? And I'm sure in that moment, you know, she's thinking back to probably when she first met Ted Cruz, and she probably thought he was a fool then, and he a fool now. So she's thinking back on that. She's like, she's thinking back on all her sacrifices, all the hard work that got her to this point where she deserves to be. She deserves a look, consideration as a nominee. So she's thinking about all that, and she's thinking, am I going to risk it all for this? And I've had that moment, you know, because you start to say, Lord, is this the moment where I'm supposed to tell everybody the truth about what I really think about them? You know, I've had that. I'm like, is this the moment? And am I going to risk it all for this? And so eventually you see her sort of gather herself together after her pause. And she decides to proceed because she knows that all of this is just a mere distraction. And she knew he was a fool then. He's a fool now. He's asking foolish questions. And she's not going to allow herself to be influenced by him in that moment. And so when she finally pulls herself together and then she proceeds to answer that question, I say to myself, okay, this is all they got. That's all they could come up with against her. And she was like, I'm not going to go for it. That's that okie doke. I'm not going to fall for the okie doke. She didn't. That's all they got. All they got is distraction and derision. That's all they have for her. That's all they have for any of us. So as I'm looking back on these hearings, you know, a couple thoughts. I'll share my general thoughts with y'all about this whole thing. These hearings, I don't know how they can get better. They're so political. They're so partisan. And it is the complete opposite of Article 2, Section 2. Article 1, Section 2, I'm sorry. It's the complete antithesis of that. You know, the Senate is supposed to just look at you, and if you're qualified, they're supposed to vote and then move on. That's not what this has become. They use this as political grandstanding and to appeal to their base. So I don't know how it can get better in terms of these Senate hearings. The other thing I was thinking about, though, I was really pleased to see so much Black solidarity and affirmation. So in the very beginning, you saw Judge Jackson's friend come and introduce her, and you could tell that there was so much pride for her in that moment. They always knew that she was like the one, right? So you saw that support, that open love and support. You saw that picture of her and her daughter. Somebody snapped the picture. I think I posted it on my Instagram. So I want to give credit to the photographer, but this beautiful picture of her daughter looking at her with so much pride. And I was like, gosh, what would happen if my daughter looked at me that way? That it was a beautiful moment. The mention of the anonymous Harvard person who passed Judge Jackson when she was, you know, just a student at Harvard, and just leaned over to her and said, persevere. I've had that moment, a Black woman in the A&P over in the AUC who saw that I was distraught and I was trying to make it and pull myself together. And she told me, she said, you know, God is faithful. She didn't know me from anyone. And she told me that. So all those people who were supportive, and even the Reverend Brother Deacon Senator Cory Booker, who in that moment said, you're not going to steal my joy. And that's what it is. You know, if God be for us, who can be against us? You can't steal my joy. And he told her that. And I imagine in that moment that was very important for her, because again, she's taking attack after attack. And in that moment, someone had to be there to provide that relief for her. And so I was so pleased to see that. I also saw the ever-present sort of tax of racism and what it does to people of color in general, but Black people in particular. You know, you feel this sort of this weariness. You know, we're tired. It's old. It's time to move forward. It's time to move on. So I saw the ever-present attacks of racism on Black bodies and on Black minds. I also saw where going forward, now if there's anything we get from this discussion that we're having today, going forward, this is what we've got to do. We have to do whatever it takes, whatever work is necessary with your children, your families, and your communities, in your schools. Do whatever it takes to make sure that Black lives, Black value, that it's a given. It's not something that we question. It's a given. Our intelligence, our purpose, all of that has to be a given, and it cannot be reliant or depending on white validation. It can't be modified in that way. It can't be dependent on that. It just has to be, simply because we are children of God and we have inherent value. So as you all go about and do your work, just keep that in mind. I hope that you found today's discussion somewhat valuable. Rafael Eduardo Cruz got on my last nerves because he is in no position in any way, shape, or form to challenge this woman, at least not on this. And the way that he did it lets me know that they have nothing. They got nothing, and they have nothing. So with that being said, if you all like this, I hope that you all will hit subscribe, send it to other people. Let them take a look at it. Tell them to follow me on IG. But I hope you all enjoyed it. As always, I thank you so much for joining me today, this week, as we talk about that. And next week, I don't know what we're going to talk about, but it'll be something good. So until then, peace and love, everybody. I will see y'all next week.